Hey everybody, wanted to welcome you to one of our profile videos where we're talking to different folks who are in the 7 Systems course from Josh Steimle, and that I help co-host and run with him. Today on the show, we've got Stacy Havener Capital. Stacy, to begin with, let's set the tone. Let's tell people what you guys do.
Happy to. I'm honored to be here. So at Havener Capital, we help boutique asset managers launch, build, and grow funds. So I know that this is like niche upon niche. That's a thing now. So we were there before it was cool. But to give you just some context and kind of get to the why, because I think it'll be relevant as we talk about 7S. Asset management, that it's an industry, the playing field is not level. And I know we're not the only industry that has this problem, but it's a problem in our industry too. Asset management, so if you take like mutual funds, for example, and this is true for hedge funds too, but mutual funds, that industry is a $17.7 trillion industry. And 80% of the assets are owned by 25 firms, which is 3% of the firms. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of people watching are familiar with the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. So if 20% of the firms had 80% of the assets, you'd be like, okay, maybe that's sort of right-sized, but we're talking about 3% of the firms. And the business that I founded 10 years ago, Havener Capital, we sort of stand for everybody else, right? We believe that just because you're the biggest doesn't mean you're the best, and that there are a lot of really talented managers in that 850 firms that they deserve a shot. And every day we get up to sort of fight for them. I would say we're probably best known for launching new funds. And that speaks to kind of our two tribes. And I think for anybody that's sort of considering personal branding, it's important to know who you serve. And so for us, it's those boutique asset managers. And on the other side, the early adopter investors who tend to be RIAs and family offices. So very, very niche-y, but I think it's helped me and our firm in the personal branding exercises that we do with 7S. That's
great. And let's talk about some stats. Let's talk about what you guys have accomplished so far, how good you are at it.
Yeah, we're good. We're good at what we do. So to give you some context, and these numbers, you know, if you're not in asset management, they're going to seem a little eye-popping, but and they are. I'm not going to discount them. So we've raised I've personally raised $8 billion in my career in asset management, which is, you know, about 20 years. But what's interesting, and Jesse, you and I were talking about this, you know, raising billions of dollars is really challenging to do at any point in time. But for us, because we are known for these new and undiscovered funds, we're raising billions off of a very small base. So a fund that has $1 million in it, sometimes a fund that doesn't even exist yet, we're tasked with going out and finding what is essentially seed capital for them. And I can tell you, because I live it, raising money, you know, off of nothing, off of a dream, which all of us as entrepreneurs can relate to, that's basically the business we're in. So we've raised $8 billion. But what's really interesting is, and again, as entrepreneurs, we can all relate to this, that $8 billion kind of functioning like seed capital has led to another $30 billion in additional assets as those boutique asset managers have grown. And so it's something I'm very proud of, because we're raising money for funds, but really, like, when I think about it, we're helping businesses grow. We're building businesses for these people, and it's incredibly rewarding. So yeah, I'm very proud of the clients we serve and proud of our team.
That's awesome. So, you know, people hear numbers like that. Oh, you've raised 8 billion, you know, which allowed those customers to bring on another 30 billion since then. What would you possibly need to join one of these mastermind groups for? You know? and we should clarify, because we've got the large group mastermind, and then we've got the exclusive mastermind with, you know, that's more expensive, but you get the one-on-one help, and Stacy's in that group.
Right.
just to set an expectation for people. But
Yes.
yeah, you've done so much, you've accomplished so much, you've got a great trajectory. Why bother getting in a group like this?
It's such a good question. So I would say one of my unique abilities is certainly storytelling, but I'm much more comfortable telling someone else's story. I'm not as comfortable telling mine. So let's jump back like 3 years, and we, as a firm and me personally, like I was kind of this hidden deal sniper behind like an unmarked door. No, I mean, I remember, and when I was prepping for this, I remember one of our friends in the industry that, is a service provider, helps people launch funds. And they often get asked, like, we need to raise money, who should we call? And I remember someone saying to me, well, you can call Stacy, but she probably won't talk to you. And I thought, this is like, it's not me. I'm definitely an introvert by nature. And so I tend to be somewhat shy and aloof. But my heart, I want to help more people. And so if you can imagine, I spend my days telling the stories of these boutique asset managers and raising all this money, but I very rarely would talk about us or me. And over time, and certainly as the kind of personal branding influence, I don't even know what you would call that, trend has grown, I started to feel like, gosh, it's great that we're raising all this money, but we only help 1 to 2 clients, new clients per year. That's it. And if we want to change the asset management industry, if we want to put a dent in those like crazy numbers of, all of the money being controlled by like 25 firms, if we want to change that, we're going to need to help a lot more people. And in order to help more people, I have to like step out from behind that unmarked door, get out from behind the curtain, and really give those firms confidence that they can do it, right? Because they don't think they can, or they're trying and it's not working, and we can help them. And so for me, it was an exercise not only in how do you even build a brand, but also in confidence.
Yeah. So, a question, I don't think I've ever asked you this one. When you think about how it got described to you to begin with versus what it ended up being, can you talk to me about the difference there?
Such a great comment. Such a great question. So I have to say, I was referred to the group by someone that I'm in another coaching group with that I've known for like 3 years. And I really value this person's opinion, and I value them as a friend and as a business person. So when they said like, you should do this, I definitely was positively inclined. I think when I went into it, even after talking with Josh, I was very confident that he was going to be a great teacher, and that I was going to build a personal brand. But I don't think I really knew what that meant. I didn't really know what it was going to require of me. Maybe I would have been a little more nervous about it. The other thing I would say that I didn't realize is I think I thought Josh is going to teach and we're all sort of the students. And I didn't realize the value of being in the group with the other people who are in the group. So there's one person in the group who's really good at YouTube videos, and I've never made a video in my life. And she was sharing with us all these tips and tricks of like how she did it, the equipment she used. And it was just so valuable to me to watch someone else be in their unique ability, doing things that I don't really know how to do, and trying that on. Like, could I do that? It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. So it's both been surprising to me, like how much I'm learning from Josh, and also how much I'm learning just from the group. Not only in the group, not only in the class, if you will, not only in the mastermind, but even just in conversations with you or, other people outside of the group. It's been game changing in a lot of ways, not just in the personal brand.
Yeah, it is interesting, that format of, the beginning is the teaching, and Josh is kind of fire hosing us with all this greatness, right?
Yeah.
And then as we go around the group and you kind of get to hear how different people, like we all heard the same thing, but people processed it differently, or they fit it into their world differently. And then I feel like I got so much more out of it by hearing how everybody else filtered it, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
I'm actually interested because, I was friends with Josh, obviously, before he asked me to run this with him. But even to begin with, like, I met him because I was searching on Google, like, how do you become a Forbes contributor, right? How do you get
Yeah.
into major magazines? And the guy's like all over the internet,
All over.
right? But so I had been seeking him out, and I was like, hey, I probably can't afford this guy's fees. I'll just ask him to be on the podcast and get my advice for free, right?
Yeah.
And then we became friends, and we'd been doing stuff together for a while since, before he asked me to do this, right? So I went into it knowing so much of what he'd accomplished. I'm interested in how he got described to you, and kind of like your initially who you thought he was versus now, months and months into it, just any differences you see.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. So I would say, again, because this came from a trusted resource, someone I knew, and I like, my circle's tight, obviously, I'm like hiding behind the unmarked door. So I was very positive. I was just like, okay, if this person tells me that Josh is the guy, then Josh is the guy. Like, that's kind of I did a call with him. I loved the call. The initial call with him was so awesome. When he asks you a bunch of questions. This was one of my favorite parts. He asks you a bunch of questions, and then at the end, he sort of states what you do, like what makes you unique, back to you. And when he did that, I was like, yeah, that's it. Why was that so easy for you to do? Because he said it in such a succinct way.
Yeah.
And for me, like, it would, take me an hour and a half to figure out, like, okay, like, is the person still awake? Like, are we still talking? So it was just, I'm like, okay, this person, and we're in such a niche space. The fact that he was able to really get it and communicate it, I thought, I have a lot to learn from this person. The Forbes, articles and all of those things, if I knew, so I would say it worked for me to not know all of that. Because had I known, I probably would have been more nervous, right? When you guys, one of the things that was great about being this mastermind was when Josh said, like, we're going to get you guys some press. And Jess, I think you were the one that reached out and said, hey, this is the topic. Can we get some quotes? And I just thought, like, well, that's not really going to happen. So of course I'm fine to, like, give the quote, and then here it goes into Forbes, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting like texts from people who are like, I just saw this, quote from you. Like, when did you get so big time? And I'm like, I have no idea. So no, I think for me now, I have, such an expanded view of Josh's influence and his skill set and his knowledge and his expertise that I didn't probably know when I went into it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I feel like you and I talked about this. I feel like lately, where we've kind of been talking more about like mastering LinkedIn,
Yes.
that's like really maybe come to the forefront of just like how many details he knows. Where, like, I've been on LinkedIn for a decade. No, I think I got on LinkedIn like 2006, maybe 2005,
Yeah.
right? Like, I didn't do anything with it, but I just sat there for all those years, right? But like by default, I thought I was like decent at it. I had a bunch of connections. I thought I was okay. And then, like, I've been friends with Josh. I don't know, it's got to be at least a couple of years that we've been coaching each other and working on projects together and doing things. And yet every time he opens his mouth about it, I still learn new stuff that I didn't know. And it's like, he's like forgotten more than I knew or something.
I know. I agree with you. Yeah, LinkedIn, the last few masterminds where we've had LinkedIn as the topic have been some of my favorites. And I mean, it is literally like watching the master at work. I don't even think he realizes, like, to him, and I think this is often the case, when you're in your unique ability, you don't even understand why people think this is groundbreaking. You're like, seriously? To him, he's like, I'm editing your headline on LinkedIn, or I'm helping you think it through. Like, it can't be as valuable as you guys are making it seem. But guess what? It's that valuable.
Okay, actually, let's get into this. I want you to talk about, last September when you were
Oh,
getting in versus the last
yeah.
couple of months.
So I did some stats. So asset management, we got to have the numbers, right? So in prep for this, I was like, I got to get some stats handy. So similar to you, and I bet most people who are on LinkedIn would say the exact same comment of, I've been on LinkedIn for a really long time and didn't know what to do with it, so did nothing with it. And I was in the same camp, right? So I joined the mastermind in 2019, and I still did nothing with LinkedIn. Okay, so I joined in 2019. I did not post like something from that I wrote in my, I wrote myself from my heart, from my head onto LinkedIn until March of 2020.
So
Guys,
September to March.
September to March. Okay, it's May. So I've only been writing on LinkedIn for 2 months. That said, my company was sort of posting things on my page, right? But there's a big difference, and I say this like it's coming from me, it's coming from Josh, because I learned this in 7S. There's a big difference between content that your company is posting on your page and content that comes from your heart. One of the best things that Josh said was people connect with people, not companies. And so with that backdrop, you had asked a question about like, what has 7S taught me or what have I got out of it? I would say it's all the skills, but also the confidence, right? It's like the push of, you can do this. Yeah, it might seem scary to you, but you should get out there and say something. And so for me, it took from September to March. But for others, I would encourage you not to wait that long, because what has happened in the last 2 months on LinkedIn has literally, it's blown my mind. It's, in fact, the Forbes article showed up on my LinkedIn page, and that was in March. That was the spark that got me to start writing. And I can give you some stats. So I think going into that, I had like, I don't know, maybe a little over 1,000. And by the way, I have no idea if these numbers are good, bad, or whatever, but this is just my reality. So I had a little over 1,000 connections or followers, whatever, on LinkedIn. I started posting in March. In 2 months, I have now 2,700 followers on LinkedIn. And I don't post every day. I post maybe 2 to 3 times a week. And I always post just from me, right? My company still once in a while puts things on my page, but most of the posts that, the 2 to 3 per week are coming from me, and they're just text. There's no fancy images. It's just me talking to our tribes, and it's been amazing. I think the day I finally got the courage to change my headline, I think is what you call it in LinkedIn, and to update like the bio part, the description, which again, I was like, this isn't going to do anything, but I'll do it. Like within 5 minutes, I got an email in my inbox from someone who found me on LinkedIn, and the person was from a $4 billion hedge fund that was thinking of launching a new fund and wanted to talk. They're still they're like moving through the prospect funnel right now. I got another $4 billion lead today from today's post. So it's real. I've just been shocked. I'm shocked. I just totally underestimated what would happen.
So you're in the group. You're paying for the expensive mastermind, the in-person one, right?
I do nothing. That's how I operate.
Do nothing September to March. And, you're absorbing all these things, right? But then you start executing, and you go from 1,000 followers 2 months ago to 2,700.
Yep.
And can you talk about any of the business implications of that, leads or opportunities?
Oh my God. So I had those two. It's crazy. I would say so we have a sales, I have a colleague who does sort of sales for the firm, right? Who's kind of talking to prospects, and literally yesterday he said to me, you need to stop posting on LinkedIn. And I'm posting on my page, right? So that was one of my questions. I was like, I don't understand, like, what if my team freaks out and like is wondering why I'm not writing for the house brand and I'm writing for myself? And Josh, very astutely said, no, they're sort of the same thing. And again, people will connect with you over connecting with your company, right? And so, no, our sales guy is like, what the? I mean, there's been a steady, I would say 5 to 7, maybe more leads per week. And every week it's more. So after I posted today, I think I got 4 or 5 leads today alone.
Wow. That's
And,
incredible.
and look, some of it is probably even a little too early for us, but I think the perception even within our industry is that like nobody real is on LinkedIn. Wrong. Like everybody's on LinkedIn. The biggest, the smallest, like it's a level, that is a level playing field. Because anybody can connect with anybody.
So that's awesome. And I think those are above average results, just so you know.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, great.
But when I think about your posts, you look at what a huge percentage of people out there are, they're putting something up, but they're not starting a conversation. They post a link to something else, and they say like, oh, look at this or something, which it just sounds like a declaration. Like it's not an invitation to engage with them, right? And even my own friends who are like working hard at this, and I see them posting multiple times a week, but like that could have been a bot. There was nothing personal in it. And these are like my good friends, and there's nothing that connected me to them more because they posted that. I didn't learn anything about them. I didn't even know how they feel about this article, right? And it's certainly like, and I know they want engagement, and so like I've done things like I try to ask them a question in the replies. Like I try to write a post for them of like, hey, I know you're doing this, for a reason. What did you get out of that article? What, like I'm trying to give them something to get a conversation started, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know, it's like somebody driving by and like sticking a sticker on your wall on your
100%.
car, and then they move on, and it's like, what's
that?
What am I supposed to do with this? It's like, if I was that worried about what's going on in AI, to know what the latest article in Wall Street Journal was about it, I would actually go to the Wall Street Journal looking for that.
Right.
Yeah. But then when I think about what you've been writing in the last few weeks, it's like you're sharing your wins, you're sharing your disappointments, but it's all got this like tinge of optimism. Like I can know when you've got a post, I'm gonna click the read more thing, and it's gonna go like this. Okay.
It's always long. Because it's very wordy.
Yeah, but it wasn't like 3 sentences of fluff. Like you actually wrote something. You know what I mean? And I'm not surprised that you're getting drastically better results than everybody else who's posting a link, which LinkedIn hates when we post links. Right. And you're sending their customers to other sites instead of theirs, right?
Yep. Learn it in 7S. It's there. It's there for you.
But that, like you said, the human aspect, like we all buy, people buy from people they like. No shocker, right? And when we post these like ultra professional, like clinical statements on there, nobody is like developing a deeper relationship with us from that, right?
Right.
It's almost like posturing, like when somebody like feels a little less than other people and they start telling you where they went to school and their resume and stuff. It's not sort of a friendship. That's like me being an audience so that you can feel validated, right?
So that's what I was going to say. I mean, I think part of it is, and it's kind of the knock on any social media platform, is that people are using it as a way to build themselves up. And so it's like a little bit of like a brag board. Like, I did this and my company is really cool and I'm cool and I'm good. And, it's me. And it's all edited for only the good, right? Only the best. And I don't know. I mean, that's not what I would want to read. So for me, it's not what I want to write.
Okay, but isn't that shocking if we were to look at our own behaviors of what we've all been posting for the last 5 or 10 years
Hmm.
versus the ones we would actually want to read? And
Yeah.
most of us have not been posting what we
What
would
you'd
want
want
to
to
read.
read.
Like,
Agreed.
anyway.
So I think that's, you know, and I'm still learning. So I'm only 2 months in. I mean, I've been in the 7S mastermind, but it's taken me that long to get the confidence to start, posting and learning. And of course, when you get the validation, it makes you want to do more. So like now I'm like it even more than I did going into it. Right. But the comfort level that you have with just being real, and going back to the beginning where I was like probably going into too much detail on the niches, but I think the reason that I wanted to share that with the very specific tribes is because if you have a specific tribe and you really understand who you serve and you really understand what their problems are, then when you write content, you know how to help them. And that's really what people like. Right? So if I know what specific challenges a boutique asset manager has in launching a new fund, then I can help them or give them some ideas or share things that I'm encountering that might in turn help them. So it has to come, in my opinion, from a place of giving and from a place of honesty. And I think people react to that. The post that I did about losing that one deal, it's probably has the most engagement of any post I've done. Right? Who would think that? I'm talking about a loss. But people commented like, how refreshing that someone's talking about a loss, because guess what? We all lose deals. And so I think that's partly where the confidence building came from for me.
But even that one, I've got to say, as a compliment to you, some people get on there and they're like, it's like when they're fishing for compliments. Do you know? It's like it's almost like they're putting themselves on a pedestal of look at how humble I am. But it's just theater, you know?
Yeah.
Or it can be either poor me, or it can be theater of me being vulnerable instead of just like straightforward, dialed in, human to human, you know?
Yeah.
And it is, I guess, and maybe I'm just repeating myself now, but I guess I'm in certain ways, in hindsight, like not surprised at all that you're getting the level of response you're getting because it's so rare. Do you mean in a crowded space, those type of posts are so uncommon that it naturally stands out, right? In the sea of brag boards,
Yeah.
that is so uncommon that it naturally would get attention purely from its uncommonness. And then it's the connection, it's the reality, it's the helps me feel like it's okay for me to be a real human too, right? It's like
Yeah.
by you doing that, it gives me permission to do something similar. You know, I think about just being in the group with you guys, and I'm like supposed to be leading with Josh, right? Where I'm just learning, and just seeing what different people in the group, like while we're on LinkedIn, seeing what different people have accomplished in the group in LinkedIn has
I
made me
know.
feel like, where I hear about Josh, maxing out his 30,000 connections and then moving on to followers. And I'm like, that's awesome. I got to learn from that guy. But I didn't always have this feeling of like, oh, I could for sure do that. But then, the 10 of us sitting there talking, and month after month, you hear people's numbers going up by like thousands. Also, I'm
Yeah.
like, well, if they can do it, like if they can learn, I can learn it.
That's 100% what my part of it, when I was prepping and sort of thinking about, well, what am I really getting out of it? So obviously there's the knowledge, there's the skills that Josh has that, it's amazing to learn from him as the coach, as the teacher, the things that you pick up from the rest of the group. And then the other thing I wrote down when I was prepping was it's like peer pressure in the best way. Because if you're at all competitive, I think one of the people in the group said that they were tracking like everyone's LinkedIn, and I'm competitive. I'm an athlete. I'm like, what do you mean you're tracking it? And he's like, I'm tracking everyone's. And I'm like, I'm not even playing. I'm not even in the game. So there's a game, time out, right? Like, but it was, again, to me, that all comes back to the confidence. You see somebody take a leap. You see one of the members launch a podcast. You see somebody, do a video that's never done a video. And you're like, no, I can do this. I can. And that's part of it for me, for sure. That positive peer pressure. You're like, well, wait, they're all doing it. I can do this. I can do this.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And we don't have to stay on LinkedIn forever. It's just, current events, right?
Yes.
I do want you I want you to talk about, like the idea of switching from just clicking the connect button to writing a personal message. And then the thing you sent me yesterday.
So do I give the backstory of how this started?
Yeah. Well, at least tell us what you used to do.
Okay. Well, again, you're talking to like an introvert here. So now I'm on LinkedIn and, I'm like, okay, so how do you like connect with people here? LinkedIn's great about giving you suggestions. So I'd look at the suggestions and I'd be like, oh, I know that person, or I don't know that person, but they're definitely in the tribe, or I feel like I've met that person, but maybe not. And you can just like hit connect in one of the views. The message window doesn't pop up. It just, you hit connect and I don't know, it goes into like LinkedIn land and does its magic. And so that was like my basic strategy. I was just connect. No. Our last LinkedIn, our last 7S session, Josh, everyone was like, oh, what are you guys doing for messages? And I'm listening and I'm like, okay, I think I might be doing this wrong. I think I'm supposed to say something. But on the flip side, if I know when people send me notes on LinkedIn, I often feel like I'm about to get sold. And so, but yeah, if someone just hits connect, I sort of do a like, who are they? What, okay. And how many connections do we have in common? And okay, yeah, like you're in my tribe, like done. So to be fair, there was a little bit of thought behind it. But that said, I walked away from 7S and I said, okay, like you guys gave me an example. You picked like some, very, very prominent figure in the asset management space and said, well, what if you wanted to connect with that person? Would you just hit connect? Well, not anymore, not after this class. So yeah, was this yesterday? Yeah. So yesterday, and I have the email here or the message. So yesterday I said, I'm going to try this. I'm going to pick somebody who's like, maybe a little bit out, it's still in the tribe, but like up a couple levels, someone I wouldn't naturally reach out to, and I'll do a message and let's just see what happens. So I did, and it worked. And it worked like really well, like within 60 seconds. Do you want me to read this?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So basically I wrote to this person who's like C-level and for a very big firm, and they specialize in behavioral finance, which is an area that I'm fascinated with. So my message, whatever you call it on LinkedIn, was person's name, love your firm, but even more than that, love your role/title, parentheses, mildly obsessed with behavioral finance. Look forward to your posts and to geeking out on one of the most underappreciated and most valuable components of the investment world. High five, Stacy. And literally, so that was at 10:44. So the response was at 10:44. And it says, Stacy, wow, that's got to be the best LinkedIn invite I've ever received, if only because it plays to all of my biases. You also live in one of the most beautiful places on earth. My bro is in Providence. I live in Newport, Rhode Island. As a thanks, please shoot me a good mailing address and I'll send you copies of my books. Look forward to connecting. We ended up having a further chat because of course I was like, double wow, I'm getting books? Like this is insane, And we ended up chatting for, a couple more messages within LinkedIn. And I saw this morning that he's following our firm now. In addition to sort of being one of my connections. And it was like a genuine heartfelt note from me and a genuine connection. Like, I honestly feel like we're friends now. And you don't get that when you just hit the connect button. You don't get books, you don't get that genuine connection, you don't get the, additional notes back and forth. So another example of why, like, the push from 7S, it wasn't just like Josh or you saying, this is how you do it, you write a message. It was realizing that everybody else, there's that positive peer pressure again, was using an approach that I didn't know. And then I had to figure out a way to make it mine. And I, again, just floored by it.
I love it. It's funny. I'm sitting here in my brain thinking, oh, what's it like to listen to us sitting here and yammer, right? And I'm thinking, like, have we really said anything like earth shattering? Like, they all just feel like these one little thing, right? And sometimes the little tactical tips, they're like, I don't know, it feels like, well, couldn't I have just read that in a book or something, right? But when I think about these months we've been doing this together, I think that, like, it's almost like we can't quite describe how, like, all the parts together are better than them separate. Like, you get an expert like Josh saying, oh, I used to do it like this, it's wrong, I did it wrong for like 5 years, here's the way you really need to do it. It's like, oh, well, I'll skip 5 years, that's great, right? But then you hear so-and-so just got 10,000, it's just almost 10,000 followers from doing this, and you're getting, $4 billion firms reaching out to you after you do stuff like this, right? And it's like the compound of, like, there's a few big breakthroughs, and then there's all these just mini note that it's like enough of those little tweaks has like this compound interest effect. Plus you see what your friends are doing. Plus you hear that other people are getting ahead of you. So the competitiveness gets stirred up a little, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I don't know. It's funny, as I list any one of those things, I'm like, is that really worth the money? Personally, that's what I'm asking myself. But then when you add them all together, I'm like, actually, that is worth the money, isn't it?
It is worth the money. And it is worth the money. And to me, though, it might not be, any one of those individual things might not seem like a lot, but isn't it always the small things that have the biggest impact? So I've been on LinkedIn forever. I changed my headline and within minutes got an email from a $4 billion hedge fund. That could be coincidence. Maybe I would have got that anyway, but something tells me I wouldn't, right? And all, as you said, all the things that happen because of that you can't measure. It's, in some ways, it's like that Visa commercial where it's priceless, because the small steps are the big leaps in hindsight.
Well, and I know we're talking a lot about LinkedIn here, but it's like the same thing. You look at, one of our friends in the group who spent about 6 months talking about a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, like, for me, because I've done 375 episodes or something, right? I'm like, you actually just need to book it. Like, you're okay, right?
Yeah, just do it.
And I felt like we were having like Groundhog Day conversations some of the time, he and I, right? But yet it's like that accountability of somebody was checking in with him every month, and there's like this pressure of like, you still didn't get to it yet, and like nobody's like giving him the gears or making him feel bad that he didn't do it.
No.
But how stoked was I last month when it came out, when it was the real thing, right?
Agreed. And to that point, I mean, before the mastermind happens is usually when, like, I'll be like, oh, the mastermind's on Thursday. What did I say I was going to do? Crap. Yeah. Like, I got to go do that, because of the accountability. And it works everywhere. Like, you meet someone at the gym because it makes you go to the gym. For this, you want to build a personal brand. How long have you wanted to build a personal brand? For years? And how you doing? Because most people aren't going to do it on their own. Like, who's going to read the book? I've read the books. You really going to do the thing?
Well, and something else you kind of brought up too is, like, I was stoked to just be in the group, let alone helping run it with Josh to begin with, right? And I'm thinking like, oh man, look at all these secrets I'm going to learn from Josh. Look at, I want to get invited to Richard Branson's island and do interviews with the chief marketing officers at Spotify and GE and Audible.com. I'm an Audible nerd, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny though, how much value, like, I feel like sometimes I should be paying you guys, like, you think about like the peer-to-peer factor, and like, I've been in other groups and I know that, and everybody claims that, right? But for me, like, it has been great as people are like actively trying to get somewhere. It's not like the CEO clubs I've been in where people are mostly just looking to develop a relationship so they can get a lead, right?
Hmm.
It's almost like a glorified networking group, right?
Yeah.
Just a little more sophisticated, where you don't shake hands and put a card in somebody's hand while you're doing it, right?
Yeah.
But here, there's like this aspect of like, it kind of attracts those ambitious people who are like genuinely trying to get something done, instead of making like another 3%, 5% progress this year, right? And like,
Yeah.
how great was it for me? I'm in the middle of starting our real estate investment trust. I want to go out, raise, some pretty significant amounts of money, and I get to hang out with you, right? And you're reviewing my stuff and giving me ideas, and it's like leapfrogged me ahead in ways that I never thought I was going to get out of this group, right?
Yeah. Those are I agree. And that's why I was saying, like, it's changed my business too, like the conversations that we have. And again, like, just getting someone, when you're in your business and you're in the weeds of it, it's so easy to just, I don't know, you're talking to yourself, you're making it more complicated, whatever. And, I do that all the time. Then I talk to you and you say something and I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's that simple. Like, why have I been spinning my wheels on this? Or why don't I go do that? Um, so I 100% agree. And I also think that what's interesting about the group is, and it kind of goes to some of the stuff that I think about in raising capital, it doesn't really matter what industry you're in. Like, there are people in the group that are like nowhere near finance and asset management, right? They're like in total other business lines.
Selling, advertising, doing all sorts of different
God,
things, right?
home building and food, travel, yeah, like organizational behavior, just awesomeness, like stuff that I don't know anything about. But at the end of the day, the principles are the same, right? The principles of how to do brand building or build your personal brand, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. And I think about that all the time. Like, capital raising is capital raising. Doesn't matter. And we were chatting before, like, it doesn't matter if you're raising money for a fund or your business, or if you're selling pens or whatever. Like, getting people to trust you and be willing to give you money or a sale is the same. And so what I think is great about our group is the principles apply to all of us, and yet somebody might say something they're doing that they think is unique to their industry, and it might spark an idea for me because I can translate that back to how it works in asset management, and I might decide that I want to try that.
Yeah.
So I like that part of the group so much, because it's not just a bunch of people in finance talking to each other, and yet I still have you who totally gets what I'm saying, and we can have more specific conversations. So to me, it's such a great mix of people.
Yeah, it is. I know you've brought this positive peer pressure thing up a couple of times, but
Yeah.
for me, it's fun. Like, I'm a nerd for all like the special ops guys, that I put on the podcast.
Yeah.
So I really like that you wore your BDUs today. That you got your camo on, because
Yeah.
you're not taking any
It's my
prisoners.
uniform.
Yeah.
Literal.
But but to your point though, like, they're not people who are not that satisfied with where they're at, who are like actively trying to do something about it, because we've all been thinking about doing something about it for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like the group naturally attracts the people who are like at that point of like, no, I'm finally going to start delivering on those good intentions. And like you were bringing up about seeing it in multiple industries, like, I think about, our friend that referred you into the group and
Mm-hmm.
his research, where he's putting out original research about all the entrepreneurship stuff that's happening in his
So
entire state.
cool.
And it's like, I've heard the principle of doing original research so many times. One of my heroes, Joe Paluzzi from the Content Marketing Institute, right, wrote Killing Marketing, favorite marketing book of all time. And he explicitly says the number one thing that has got more attention than anything we've ever done is original research, right?
Fascinating.
Think I've put any of it out? Think I've done any of it? Right? And then I don't know if you saw just last week,
Yeah.
the
He was
new
on your
member of
podcast.
our group, she just put out her original research about her area.
I
And
did
it's like,
not.
oh, it's good. And I'm like, dang it. They're all getting ahead of me. I like, this has got to quit being a good idea and I've got to do something about this now. But there's this like believability factor where it's not Joe Paluzzi who's advising the biggest brands in the world, like literally the biggest brands in the world, right? It's these people that we know and talk to and we see every month and we see all the things that they're bad at. And you're like, they're not actually smarter than me. They've just done what they've done longer and they've got different talents than I do. And that
Yeah.
like, I can do it too factor is like, you know, if anything in life, I typically need to learn a little more humility, right? Like I'm like that guy who sits in the meetings and like, I've never been in a meeting I didn't think I could run better, right? Okay. But being in that group, I'm going like, yeah, what have I been intimidated about? Like I would never would
Yeah.
have described it as being intimidated. I would have said I'm too busy. I would have said all these things. But like really, I
Those are
did have,
called excuses.
yeah. I'm full of excuses. But in hindsight, I realize it's like this trepidation of like, man, that seemed like, I don't know how I could eat that whole elephant. That seems like a big deal.
I agree. And I think that that is one of the most valuable parts. It is, because I mean, I didn't even know I wanted to do original research until you just said that. Now I'm like, I got to figure out some original research to put out there. But it's because you're watching people embrace good ideas. And again, you're translating it back into like, that's really good. I should do something like that. What does that look like for me, for my firm, for my industry, for my tribes? And it gives you that inspiration. And then, oh, by the way, just know that in 30 days, you're going to be with those people again. And if you've done squat, you're going to have to tell them that.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that factor. And there's this like, and maybe I'm just repeating myself, but like, I think too, when you watch these people who become your friends, they start to do stuff and you're like, they're saying like, well, you know, I'm always asking the group, hey, what do you want to accomplish by the next time we're on this call? Right.
Right.
And they're like, well, I'm going to get this done. And like, you know, if I'm being honest, a bunch of times I'm like, that's it in a whole month. That's all you're going to try. Right. And luckily I keep those comments to myself.
Yeah.
And they do these little things a couple times in a row and a couple times in a row. And then all of a sudden they do something bigger.
Yeah.
It honestly wasn't that much bigger. It was just a little more. And then like you, they get 1,700 more connections in under 2 months. And you're like, how did that math work out? They're not doing that much more. And that's like this drastic result. And it makes it feel so much, at least to me, it makes it feel so much less like that one big marathon I've got to gear myself up for and run for 7 hours straight on. And it feels
Agreed.
much more like you know, got to get in my 20 minutes a day.
100% agree. And it's manageable. I mean, mine are, you must really love when I give mine will be like, I'm going to try sending a message to someone on LinkedIn. It's like, really? That's your big breakthrough? But I mean, like that was a big breakthrough for me because I wasn't doing it. And it was small, but mighty. And to me, that's really where the true power of it is. I think, you know, like there's other topics that we might cover in 7S, like getting published and, you know, that seems huge.
Yeah.
Like writing a book seems terrifying to me. Of course, you know, it took me 6 months to do LinkedIn, like just wait and see how long it takes me to do that. But I'm so excited to learn about it because the reality is it's probably not that terrifying.
Well, and especially when Josh is like going to introduce us to ghostwriters and helpers and
Exactly.
show you how to do it bite by bite. You know, I think about the things that I have been intimidated by. And like, it is interesting, you know, in the smaller group, I don't know if you know this, we've got all these people, like this morning, we just did this month's call. And, you know, on the call, you've got people in India, people in Israel, people in Italy, people
That's
in
interesting.
Canada, people here at home. And in so many ways, like the human condition is so similar. It's almost the same. It's almost the same story everywhere with a little different flavor on it. Right.
Yeah.
But then you look in our group and, you know, we've got folks who, you know, they've raised, you know, they're in charge of $150 million assets themselves. And they talk to me like a peer,
Yeah.
you know, and that's like, it's such an advantage for me to have people like that like, I think about one of our last calls when I was telling you my whole, hey,
Oh yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to get pension funds to pay attention to us pedigree wise and stuff. So I'm not going to go after pension funds, da, da, da. And by the end of it, you're like, Jess, you don't need pension funds.
You don't.
Like if you did that, if you can actually deliver on your like fantastic idea there, your pie in the sky idea, if you can actually do that, those people are going to come to you and want to look
Yeah.
for that fundraising model. Like quit trying to, I felt like what you're saying is like, quit trying to be something you're not, like be
The-
yourself harder.
yes. I love that. That's 100% I was saying. And again, in some ways it ties back to one of our like recurrent themes in this combo, which is start small. Like if you start small, you might not ever need the big,
Yeah.
right? Because there's so much in a niche or in that first small step or that little change you make or the fact that maybe you know, I mean, and that applies to everything. Like if I don't ever work out and I start going for a walk 3 times a week, the impacts of that are going to be enormous. But if I don't ever work out and I decide I'm going to go run a marathon and the next day, like I'm going to like, why don't do that. Just start with something small that's manageable, that pushes you, but you can accomplish, right? And get the win and then see what that leads to. You have no
Yeah.
idea. You may never need the pension fund.
So I love that you had notes for this call and I haven't even covered the questions that I told you to
No,
prepare
I
for.
think you did.
But
I'll check
and
my notes.
we took a ton of time. But my most important question, the last question on there, I think we just need
It's the
to
hilarious one. I
we
have
need
no
to put,
notes on that.
yeah. So I do want to think about this because I think one of the things I've been so impressed with you over time is you're so curious, you're so open to learning, like you're coming at things with the beginner's mind.
Mm,
And you straddle that with this self-belief of even if you are intimidated by some things, you are willing to look at the facts and acknowledge, well, objectively, I do have this skill set.
yeah.
And I feel like it saves you from indulging in fear or indulging in reasons not to move ahead. Like you, I feel like you have a really admirable, I don't know if I can talk, admirable mix
Yeah.
of like a circle of competence, like a legitimate circle of competence. You've paid the price. I really enjoyed our conversations about the level of thinking you put into thinking what's in it for them, for these customers.
Yeah.
That sounds so simple, but you've spent years going deep on it, right?
Hmm.
And yet, like you're not posturing, you're not doing the brag board thing, you're not saying look at me, look at me. You're showing up almost seeking the parts you don't know yet, instead of looking for opportunities to validate yourself and have everybody think highly of you.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you. This is
so
why
my
I hang out with Jess.
yeah. So my question is, for those of us who want to do better at that,
Hmm.
where we are choosing humility, we're not giving in to the temptation to shine up our merit badges of I belong, you should care about me.
Hmm.
And but at the same time being able to own it, of like,
Yeah.
hey, like other humans might have more hours in on that, or they might have more talent on that thing, but and I'm putting words in your mouth and you can tell me if you feel differently, but sometimes I feel
Yeah.
like I feel like you're like living this message of like, well, I don't know how we're going to do it, but if enough other humans have figured it out, we can figure it out
Yeah.
too.
That's 100% how I feel every day. Um, so, so the question is, how can people kind of get
Yeah.
to that place?
What if I'm trying to choose more humility and more confidence, which
Hmm.
seem to be at odds?
That's great. I love that. Um, okay. So I would say it probably does tie back to putting yourself in another person's shoes. Um, and that's how we do everything here. It's how I've basically like built the business and probably how I've always lived my life. But I see new people come in and I see them transition from, okay, am I speaking from a place of me or am I speaking from a place of them? right? And the confidence that I have probably ties back to the latter, right? Because if I speak from a place of the client or the tribes that I serve, the boutique asset managers, the RIA, I have so much passion and belief in them that it gives me bravery, right? So if I write something and I'm speaking to the boutique asset manager and I'm trying to instill confidence in them and I'm going to share some ideas that have worked for me, I'm so brave on that because I want them to succeed. And it's not really about me, even though maybe it is. It's not where it comes from. It comes from like, this is what we're doing and this can help you, and go do it. Like, don't hide, don't do this or don't do that, or you should do this. Like, come on, because as a group, we have to, band together and fight for the boutique asset manager and, for the independent RIA. And so it almost is probably a mental twist for me, because if I thought I was writing about myself, I wouldn't do it. I would read it 1,000 times, decide it was a bad idea, turn off my computer. It would just, but because I'm doing it for someone and I've maybe tricked myself into thinking that it matters to someone or could help someone, I come at it with a totally different level of confidence. And that's what fuels me.
I love it.
And so I would just practice that. I mean, The Go-Giver is a great book. It's a really easy read. It's written as an anecdote, and it talks about putting yourself in someone else's shoes. We make everybody who joins the firm read that book for that reason.
Yeah. Do you know who it's by? I really like that one, but I can't remember the author.
Yeah, it's by, here it is, Bob Berg.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and the other thing I would say is, like the other day, I was chatting with some people and I was saying, I'm doing this LinkedIn thing, and like our business development guy or sales guy is like, well, could you stop posting, because we don't have an offering for some of these people that now want to work with you. And I was like, no, I'm not going to stop posting, and I don't give a shit if we don't have an offering, because that's not why I'm doing it. And now that I see that it's helping people, I'm going to do it more. So you better just get ready to figure out how we're going to help them. But I don't care. For me, it's not coming from a place of, I've got something to sell you. It's coming from a place of, I believe in you and I want to help. And that's what I'm writing about.
Well, and I think that's kind of the magic, is your approach of trying to be of service to people in a non-transactional way is uncommon. It makes people feel good. It's a competitive advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. And again, like, here's another random example. And I know that, again, this is all about LinkedIn, but for me, that's the only thing I've stepped to. So it's like my only frame of reference. But it's been so huge. I can't imagine adding something else into the mix, because I'm like consumed by it now. It's been just so powerful. But the other thing that happened was, so most of the stuff I write from the perspective of the boutique asset manager, because that's kind of our client, right? They're coming to us. We need to help them raise money. That's who I sort of stand for in this unlevel playing field. And then on the other side is this tribe of early adopter investors who are typically RIAs and family offices, many of whom I've known for years. So last week, I've probably known this RIA for 20 years, like my whole career. And they've invested in multiple funds we've had. And they sent me a note and they said, we've been following you on LinkedIn. I had done some posts on niching down. And they said, we're really struggling with this ourselves. And could we talk to you? I said, of course. So we jump on the phone and they tell me where they're at, and I give them a bunch of ideas. And they say, this has been so valuable. Like, how can we hire you? And I'm like, I don't know, because that's not like part of my business model. But they were like, no, like, we need your help. And another RIA wrote me and said, I've been following you on LinkedIn and I want to change how I'm like approaching, you know, who I serve. I want to get more niche-y. Can I hire you? And so I share this because this was not even on my radar. That's not a business line we currently have. But I love that tribe. And if I can help them, I will try to find a way. I don't know what that will look like or what's the best answer. But I think, you know, for me, hearing people say, like, we need your help, I'm like, well, I'm game. If I can help you, like, we'll figure it out. Those are unintended, they're not even consequences, unintended benefits that I never envisioned happening from writing on LinkedIn.
But, you know, it's funny that you talk about being intimidated about writing a book, right? And like next month, I think will probably be the launch of like the 12-month program where, you know, the 7 systems program, and especially at your level is going to be including all the help to get a book done so that a year from now you have a book out. Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I know you've done speaking already. We want to help you do more of that. The LinkedIn that lines up with it, get you in Forbes more times, stuff like this, right? But my point I'm saying I want to bring up is what you've already been giving in your speeches and what you've been writing on LinkedIn. Like, I know the book sounds intimidating to you, but we're basically just going to make you gather all of that.
I know.
And like, my point is you've already got the guts of the book already. And now between Josh and, you know, whether it's ghostwriters or other things, we're going to help you put that together. And I think that like, we should do this again in a year, right? For you to be like,
I love it.
That book sounded so intimidating. And I didn't realize I almost had like my years of experience gave me all the guts for the book. We just had to get it out.
I love it. And also for anybody that's watching this, I hope you know, feel some camaraderie in the fact that I've been in this group for how many months did we decide? From September to March before I did anything. So you don't like, I feel like some people might, if they're in that situation, they might say, well, what am I doing? I'm not using this. I should just get out of this group. But the thing is, like, you have to go at your pace, right? You have to just know that by continuing to put yourself in the situation around people who are going to push you and let that happen. And it might not happen in the first month. You know, if you're like me, you got to like try that on for a while. And so the book probably take me, you know, I'll be like the last one doing, you know, the book, but I'm so excited for it. I love the curriculum idea. I feel like it gives some structure to what we're learning and it's exciting. Yeah, I'm super jazzed about that.
So if people want to connect with you, if they want to follow you, if they want to find out about your firm, will you tell us best places to connect and spell Havener for people?
Yes, of course. And you know what I'm going to say? LinkedIn, my new favorite platform. That's where I would direct people. So you can follow me on LinkedIn. My name is Stacy, Stacy, and my last name is Havener, Hav like Victor, Ener.
That's great.
I
don't have anything else. I think we should just end here.
Let's do it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.